G'day, it's Rob here again. Well, it's quite Sunday, and I can't do much, so I just thought I'd show you where the old Schaublin 102 is up to. And it's basically in its operational condition now, as I'm using it. I'm using it as a backup to my Chinese lathe, and I'm using it for the collet side of things. So any collet work now gets done on the old Schaublin 102. I redid the collet mount for this that you would have seen in the other video, because I wasn't happy with the thread I cut. It wasn't quite tight enough. For good accuracy in these, in any collet mount, you have to have a good tight, good snug thread, and this one is as snug as you could get it. So, because the thread goes a long way to locating the collet in the unit. And yeah, I'm happy with the way it's turned out. I tried to make it shorter, but it turned out longer. The trouble is, of course, you've got the length of the actual collet, the actual length of the spindle nose, which comes out to about here, out there. And then you've got the length of the collet, which is about almost the full length of this. So you've only leave yourself 20 mil, 15 mil as a shoulder between the two, so for optimum strength you want it nice and rigid. As it turns out, even though it's a little bit longer than the other one, the run out is bugger all. It's really good, and actually when you compare it to a chuck, your chuck is going to be sitting out damn near as far anyway, by the time you allow for the mount, the backing plate, and the chuck body. So you don't really miss out much at all. But accuracy-wise, she's good. And, she's nice and smooth and nice and quiet, and I'm happy with it. So in this video, I thought I'd just show you how it looks with a few of the other chucks on it. I'll put the faceplate on it, which you haven't seen, and you can see how it looks with the big old faceplate on it that came with it. I'll take this off first. That. And now we'll put on the old Pratt burner that came with it. This is the floor jaw that came with it. Right. It's quite a good sized chuck. Being a four jaw, you can just dial in the accuracy. A little spindle lock they've got on it, a handy little gadget. And of course you can index on this thing too. It's got an indexing pin as well, so she's a handy unit. Not bad for 370 bucks. Because it didn't look quite like this when I got it. And here's the little indexing pin. I made that up. It was missing, and it's all hardened and knurled, and the arm was here, and that just goes up, pivot it up, find the position, and just push the pin into the indexing holes at the back of the pulley. So it's just a matter of lining it up correctly. It's a very snug fit, so I won't do it now, but anyway, you get the idea. And of course this lathe came with a faceplate. There's the faceplate. She's a doozy. You can see it's done a lot of work. Very well made. And you just put the spindle lock on, and then just screw her on. It's a pretty snug fit. I don't think it's been on and off too many times. I think it's been on, and I think that's what most of the work on this lathe has been with the faceplate. But anyway, there you have it. Nice and accurate. I measured it, and there's very little run out. It's great. She's done some work. Of course, all Schaublins were designed to use a the drawbar. This one's no different. This is the drawbar, or draw tube, I should say. It's a draw tube. Solid copper end on it. Beat that, eh? How's that? Built like a tank, this thing. Solid copper. And in she goes. And the collet goes on the other end. Now this one here is a one that was in the box, and it's for woodwork. It's got 3 prongs that go into your piece of wood. And on this spindle, there's actually a mark up the end. There's a slot in the tube, and it had me whack what it was. I couldn't figure out what that mark was, but it's actually the reference point for the pin that's in the spindle that engages in this slot. So you turn the spindle until, whoops, put the lock off. Turn the spindle until the slot is to the top, which it is now. That's the indexing mark, and the pin that goes into this will now be coming down from the top. So if I put this in, it won't go in until I turn it around, and there it is there. Now she goes in. Put in the thing, screw her up. That's off. You're good to go. So yeah, I can do woodwork. How about that, eh? It also came with a little rest I'll show you for woodwork. But yeah, snazzy. And here's the little rest that came with it for woodwork. So that just mounts the same way as the cross slide. Use the same mounting pull down. Put that there, and you can do woodwork to your heart's content, which is good. I mean, I'd probably never do it, but you never know. One day I might want to do some woodwork, and certainly be a lot easier to clean this lathe than the other one, the Chinese way. You can see that's the blue that everything was painted when I got it, which is a sort of Schaublin blue, close. But of course this lathe was never blue. This lathe was originally black, one of the few black Schaublins. And in that era they did have, 1935 around there, they did actually have black Schaublins, and this is one of them. I know for a fact because when I stripped the paint, when I went back through the paint, the base layer, the original paint underneath was black. So this was an original black Schaublin 102. Pretty rare, I suppose, as they go. But yeah, how's good's that, eh? And a little adjuster up and down, and cool. The other thing that came with this lathe was a modern style 4-way tool post mount. And even though I did up the lantern tool post holder that came with it, which was pretty buggered, got a new bolt for it. Actually, I took a bolt out of this because it's the same thread and everything. Made up a new base for it, which you would have seen in one of my other videos. Used the tool post grinder to do that, out of good hard stuff. I use that all the time. It's really good with high-speed steel. You could use carbide with this, it's powerful enough for small stuff, but ideally this lathe's designed for high-speed steel. So anyway, of course, lantern tool post holders are okay up to a point, but they won't hold some of the more modern tooling. 13mm won't go in it. And if I want to, say, mount my pencil tool post grinder on this lathe, which I do use occasionally, for instance, when I ground the taper for the ER32, I used the pencil grinder on that. Did a perfect job. And I'd mount this on here to use that particular pencil grinder mount. And all I do is take off the lantern holder, take that plug out. It's a threaded hole, and then I just use this pull down to put the 4-way on. It's not period, but it's practical. And when I'm not using it on the Schaublin, which is not that frequently, I use it as a changeover tool post for my Chinese lathe, and I have boring bars in it. So I have this set up with boring bars normally. And if I want to do boring, I'll just take off the conventional cutter head that I've got there and put this on. So it's just like having a quick change tool post without paying any money for it. Although, once again, you go and buy these, they're not cheap either. So I just machine the base out so it goes onto the Chinese lathe, and now it fits both, so how handy is that? So you look at the top slide travel, and I mean it's huge, you know, and the top slide itself is of course massive compared to a conventional top slide on something this size. So yeah, you got way more travel than conventional lathe. So it means that doing things like tapers, not a problem. You've got all the travel in the world for tapers, and of course your cross slide is also massive, and of course you just move it while doing the clamp and slide it up and down. There's a 90-degree set here which is movable as well. That keeps your everything nice and parallel once you've set it up with test indicators to begin. And yeah, on this particular lathe, somebody's replaced the cross slide thread and nut at some stage in its 80-year-old history, and instead of using a right-hand thread, they've used one going in the wrong direction, so you actually have to turn it anti-clockwise to advance it. So you've got to remember that when you're using this, you've got to school yourself, but I don't find it a real problem, but you just have to make sure you've got your brain in gear when you use this thing. But maybe one day I'll put it back to how it should have been, but it doesn't really faze me, so you just have to remember to go that way. Some lathes in the old days actually were built with the cross slide going anti-clockwise, but there wouldn't have been too many. And of course, if you're going to do accurate work, you need a decent live centre. This is a little Chinese one I got. I did a review on, and it's quite good, quite accurate. Somebody during the course of this lathe's life has reamed machined the spindle end out from the original Schaublin taper, which is a non-standard taper, very low angle taper, to a Morse number 1. It's quite a common modification apparently, because easy to do, and also you can get stuff more readily, get parts more readily, and a lot cheaper of course. And that's a good little live center. I did a review on it and it came up good and accurate, and the ejection system and everything still works on this lathe perfectly okay. And it's got very long quill travel, no noticeable slop. It's got more travel than my Chinese lathe, more than twice as much, so it's very good on that. All of the controls on this stuff, all the travel is quite large compared to my Chinese lathe, but then again, of course, it is a toolmaker's lathe, so same as the top slide. It's got massive travel and it's massively built, so yeah, very good. And of course, you've got cam lock tail stock on this as well. But I'll show you what's in the trunk, what came with it. As you can see, it came in a nice wooden trunk. It's a Japanese trunk actually. That's Japanese. So it's goodness knows what it was for, but obviously probably machinery. And the trunk's quite well laid out, and it's got a good range of collets. They're all there, including that one. Little bronze or brass, probably bronze, dead centre. Woodworking. All these collets are imperial, and a lot of them have done a lot of work. Some of the bigger ones particularly are quite quite ordinary, we should say. The smaller sizes aren't bad, but of course the trouble with these basic type of collets is that you've got very limited compression range, so compared to an ER collet system they're pretty awful, but it's handy, and they go for big money. I mean, one of these will go for, $30. It's incredible. And the collets that came with this are worth more than the actual lathe. In fact, the fittings themselves are probably all worth more than the lathe, what I paid for the lathe anyway. But so yeah, and I'll probably like the guy that had it before me. I wouldn't want to break it up, because I mean, why would you want to break up a good set, a complete set, original set, just to make more money out of it. It's a shame, and I'd never do something like that, but people do, I know. They strip them down and sell the individual parts. I mean, just that faceplate would probably go for $200 or $300, you know. But yeah, no, I don't like that. So I keep it all together. This is the only Schaublin, well, non-Schaublin thing that came with it. It looks like a Morse 3 plate of some sort, but it's certainly nothing to do with this lathe, and I'm not really sure what you'd use that for, but I've never used anything like that. It's probably something to do with woodwork or something. No idea, but it's certainly nothing to do with the lathe, and one day I might find a home for it somewhere. So yeah, and some little chisels that came with it. They're not Schaublin chisels, they're just some chisels that came with it for woodworking. So once again, it could be handy if you ever want to do woodwork. But yeah, here's the rest of the woodworking stuff. So yeah, so that's the box of goodies that came with it. On this lathe, the compound, as I said, can be moved by undoing this screw on the bottom, this grip, and you move it up and down, and then you just lock it up wherever you want to put it. That's not original. The original one just had two knobs that came out, and you got onto those. This actually works well because it's got quite a big footprint, more to grab hold of, and apart from, would have been nice if they'd knurled it. I'll just keep using this for now, and maybe down the track I'll make up another one, and yeah, I'd do it something similar if I did, because it does actually, you know, work well. I think it would work a lot better than the original, but of course I haven't got an original, but who knows, maybe one day I will. As you can see, the dry belts is getting a fair bit of use, and yeah, having a second lathe is pretty good if you've got the room for it. I had to do a few other things to this thing since the last video. The reference pin for the collets that's in the spindle, that was worn away almost to nothingness, so I had to replace that. And also there was run out in the pulley. What had happened was, over the years, the pulley had been left a bit loose, and then once it got a bit of movement in it, then it wore. So I had to shim the pulley onto the spindle, which I've now done, and it now has no run out. It's good. So spindle side of things is perfect now, well, as good as I can get it, and yeah, everything's fully functional. And the big old 1/2 horsepower motor up the back counterbalances the whole thing beautifully. And yeah, the whole setup is quick and easy to swap over the speeds on the belts, and works great. So there you have it. There's the old Schaublin 102. The project's finished, pretty much. It's turned out well, and it's a really handy old lathe. And it's accurate. It's damn accurate. You know, you got to give it to them. They're pretty well made, considering it's so old. 1935, probably 36, around there, and it's done a massive amount of work, and it's still going to do a lot of work. I'm using it. I'm pleased I bought it, and yeah, having it set up for collets saved me swapping chucks on my Chinese lathe, which is the main workhorse. And this thing is very good to use with collets, very accurate. And overall it's been a good investment. But it's not the sort of lathe I'd recommend a beginner buy. Certainly if I was starting out on lathes, I wouldn't be buying a used lathe at all unless I was damn sure, unless somebody checked it over and, you know, said, yeah, look, it hasn't got a lot of wear in it, or it's got marginal wear, because that's the trouble. All these old lathes, you know, the chances are they've done a lot of work and they're going to be really bloody worn, and if you're starting out on machining and you've never used a lathe before, you want something that's going to be accurate. You don't want some clapped out old junker that's, you know, ready for the scrap bin, or it's got to be extensively gone through and fixed up. So my advice would be buy new, and even though they mightn't be as classical looking and as classy as these, they're going to be accurate. So they're my thoughts on it. But as a project, buying an old lathe is good if you've got the space to put it, and you don't want it to be your number one lathe until you get it fixed up, and then maybe you get rid of the original lathe. But yeah, having a second lathe in the workshops is very, very handy, and a small lathe like this is good. And of course, if you buy a toolmaker's lathe, you haven't got the problems that you've got with a worn bed, because on a toolmaker's lathe, the only wear would come from just positioning the cross slide. All the wear on these is in the top slide, which is made with long travel specifically for the fact that the compound's not being moved very often. So these have got way more travel than a conventional lathe. They're way heavier, and of course, as only physically moved every so often, you're not getting that wear in the ways that a conventional lathe would have. So yeah, but on the other hand, of course, you have to set these up correctly to use them. You have to use dial indicators on them to set them up, and you can't screw cut on this particular lathe, or any of these basic, you know, toolmakers lathes with no feed capability. So for anything other than screw cutting, these are excellent. For cutting morses or tapers, these are excellent. You've got that massive top slide travel, which is so handy. And of course you can index on these, on this one anyway. A lot of the old lathes you could index on it. And yeah, once you've done it up, you get your money back and more probably, if you do a good job on it. And they're just so nice to use. They're just so nice. They're part of history. And it's nice to have a bit of history in your shed, I suppose. But provided it's accurate at the end, it's going to be a worthwhile project. So there you go. That's my 2 bobs worth on it. And yep, I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Cheers.